See, this is our first video in the Japanese verb conjugation series for JLPT N5 level. So what is a verb? Like we all know, is a verb which expresses an action or a process. As far as the Japanese sentence is concerned, the main verb usually comes at the end of the sentence. So now what is this verb conjugation? Japanese verbs are usually spoken of as different forms which changes based on the politeness or tenses, and to achieve these forms a stem or a root of a verb is suffixed with different auxiliaries, and these auxiliaries are called as jodoshi. And there are four such main conjugations that we need to know as far as the JLPT N5 level is concerned. So I'm going to do one in each video. We are going to be looking at the very first conjugation in this video. This is not entirely new. If days, or if you look at our adjectives, iana, and very recently to denote existence to be verbs iru and aru. We've seen how they change based on politeness. For example, aru becomes arimasu, and then they change based on the tense, arimashita for past tense. That's what we're going to apply to the verbs as well. It's just that there are going to be certain rules on how we change the verbs from one form to another. So the basic form of a verb, the casual form or the plain form, or also known as jisho form. For example, when you say I'm a student, gakusei-da. Whereas when you want to make it polite, you say gakusei desu. Similarly, in the Japanese dictionary, when you refer to a word, it is always represented in the casual form of the verb, and that's why it's also called as the jisho form, jisho meaning dictionary. So before we move into our first verb conjugation, let's first see how verbs are classified in Japanese. So let's start with number 2, ichidan verbs. Ichidan. So how do we identify if a verb is an ichidan verb? It ends with iru or eru. What does that mean? So iru means the E line, all of the E vowel sounds. And similarly for eru, all of the A sounding kanas with ru. So all verbs that end in iru or eru are called ichidan verbs. For example, taberu. Taberu means to eat. And number 1, godan verbs. Broadly, anything that is not an ichidan verb is going to be a godan verb, and broadly they are called as the u group. This is the u line, but we'll dig deep into it as we do conjugations one by one. The third form is the irregular. Why they're called irregular? Because they do not follow any rules. So as far as irregular verbs are concerned, you just take it and no questions asked. So there are 2 irregular verbs, kuru, to come, tsuru, to do. Kuru and tsuru. And for godan verb, the example is kau, to buy. Kau. So now let's look at the very first verb conjugation. And what are we going to do? We're going to take the casual form of the verb and we're going to convert it to a polite form, just like the example that I gave you some time back. Gakusei-da, casual way of saying I'm a student. But then when you want to make it polite, you say gakusei desu. Similarly, your taberu and kau, the examples that we saw right now, are casual. So how do we use it in the polite form of speech? Go bottom up. So we're going to start with number 3, irregular form of verbs. The polite form, also called as the mass form of kuru, is kimasu. So kuru becomes kimasu and tsuru becomes shimasu. Some examples. Sensei wa densha de gakkou ni kimasu. Sensei wa, so topic marker wa sensei, who is it? The teacher. Densha de by means. So by means of what? The train. Location particle ni. Gakkou ni, to the school. So teacher comes to the school by the train. Watashi wa benkyou shimasu. The topic marker is me, and what am I doing? Benkyou is to study. Benkyou suru. casual way of saying I'm studying. Benkyou shimasu. Polite way of saying I'm studying. So suru. So how do we use suru? Is we suffix suru to certain nouns for them to behave like verbs. Some examples. Benkyou suru, to study. Ryori suru, to cook. Souji suru, to clean. Sentaku suru, to wash. Sanpo suru, to walk. So next is ichidan verb. So how do we convert taberu, which is in a casual form, to a polite form of the verb? Number one, we need to drop the ru. So we're going to take the same example. So taberu, we're going to drop the ru, becomes tabe. So this will be the root or the mass stem for the mass form. So going forward, whenever I say let's use the mass form of the mass stem, it means we just drop the ru and whatever is left out is called as the stem. And then you conjugate mass. We're trying to conjugate it to the mass form. So we add mass. Tabemasu. Taberu becomes tabemasu. Miru, to see. So miru, drop the ru, mass stem, and add your mas. Mimasu. Miru, mimasu, to see. Asa gohan wo tabemasu. I'm having breakfast, or I'm eating breakfast. Terebi wo mimasu. I'm watching television. Terebi wo mimasu. Moving on to go down verbs. So how do we convert a casual go down verb to the polite mass form of a go down verb? Drop the last kana. Kau. We're going to drop the u and you have ka. To this, add the kana from the corresponding e line. So what does that mean? So we had kavu. We dropped the u and we're going to add the kana from the corresponding e line. So which is e. So kai. Kai is the mass stem or the root for the mass form. Root of the verb for the mass form. So kai, and then add mas to it. So kaimasu. So what did we do? Drop the last kana, add the corresponding kana from the e line, and then add mas. So kaimasu. Kiku is to hear. Kawu is to buy. So kiku is to hear. All these are go down verbs. So kiku, drop the last kana, add the corresponding kana from the e line. So kiku. So we're dropping the ku and the corresponding e line is ki. So kikimasu. Matsu, to wait. Drop the tsu, add from the e line, so chi. Machimasu. Yomu, to read. Drop mu, suffix the mi, and then the mas. Yomimasu. Hanasu, drop su, add shi. Hanashimasu. Kiku, kikimasu. Matsu, machimasu. Yomu, yomimasu. Hanasu, hanashimasu. Kikimasu ka? Can you hear me? Kikimasu ka? Kaban wo kaimasu. I'm buying a bag. Hon wo yomimasu. I'm reading a book. Hon wo yomimasu. So that's it for the very first verb conjugation in the JLPT N5, which is the mass form of the verb. Stay tuned. I will be doing one verb conjugation per video, and that's going to be 4 videos in this entire series. So thank you so much for watching.